You're useless and at the bottom of the barrel. You're fired today. It's better to use a newbie who graduated from a prestigious university than you." Mr. Sawyer was grinning smugly. I couldn't hold it in any longer after being told that. "Understood. Thank you for everything up until now." After saying my goodbyes, I left the workplace. This was the turning point that led to Mr. Sawyer's downfall and my step towards a new life. My name is Brian. I'm a regular office worker in my 40s. After graduating from a local university, I joined a local company and worked as a salesperson for a precision equipment parts manufacturer. Since I was a newbie, I worked hard and now I'm at the top in terms of performance. Work and family are going well, and I'm working hard with the support of my kind wife. Thanks to her, I was able to become a manager before any of my peers. The person who raised me to be this way was my boss, Mr. Foster. But Mr. Foster is already in his 60s. Hearing that he would retire this year, I went to say my final farewell. "I'm very grateful for everything. It'll be lonely without you, Mr. Foster. From now on, Brian, you'll be leading the sales. Do your best. I'm rooting for you." "Yes, I will do my best." Mr. Foster patted me on the shoulder and smiled as if to encourage me. "A new manager will be coming soon, Brian. I'm sure you'll do well. You have a lot of trust from your subordinates." "I'll do my best to meet expectations, Mr. Foster. Please take it easy from now on." Thank you." It was quite sad to see Mr. Foster, who was like a father figure at the workplace, leave the company. But I vowed in my heart to lead my subordinates like Mr. Foster did. The new manager arrived the following week. He came from the headquarters, so he didn't know much about this region. But since he was an elite graduated from a prestigious university, we were expecting a great person. "Mr. Sawyer, nice to meet you. I'm Brian, a manager here. I look forward to working with you." Which university did you graduate from, Brian?" "I graduated from Towson University here." Hearing my answer, Mr. Sawyer smirked. "Never heard of it. So you're saying you're a graduate of some unknown third-rate university. Well, do your best, I guess." I was internally frustrated by Mr. Sawyer's condescending attitude. But I loved my current job, so I decided not to worry too much about it. I was concerned about the arrival of a manager with strong quirks, but I thought it would be fine as long as I continued working as usual. However, my expectation was quickly betrayed. Mr. Sawyer, not familiar with this region, began to drastically change our dealings with existing clients, calling them cozy relationships. Moreover, sticking to this is how we did it at the headquarters. He assigned us ridiculous tasks with his unique theories. "Mr. Sawyer, the previous method was much easier for that task." Don't be cheeky. Don't go against me. I am the department head. I didn't mean to oppose you. I thought I was giving helpful advice, but it seemed to have only angered Mr. Sawyer. Mr. Sawyer glared at me with sharp eyes. "Are you trying to deceive me because I'm not familiar with this region?" I wasn't thinking that at all. "But Mr. Sawyer, your method is inefficient. How dare you speak to your superior in that tone?" This is why people from third-rate universities, my colleagues who were listening to our exchange, looked panicked. Mr. Sawyer was always like this, not just with me but also making it hard for the subordinates. Whenever we expressed our opinions, Mr. Sawyer would immediately say, "This is an order from the manager. Don't oppose me as a subordinate." Due to Mr. Sawyer's refusal to listen to anyone, the atmosphere at the company turned sour. One day, when I went out for drinks with my subordinates, they said, "Brian, isn't Mr. Sawyer getting out of hand? He's changing our ways on his own, and he doesn't listen to our opinions about work. Indeed, it's been a bit hard to work. Our methods are definitely more efficient and easier, and the unnecessary overtime is getting unbearable." Listening to my subordinates' complaints, all I could do was give a wry smile. I've mentioned it a few times myself, but he doesn't listen at all. That's the point. Mr. Sawyer is particularly harsh towards you, Brian. He always brings up academic backgrounds. Anyone can see that you're good at your job if they work with you for a bit. All I could do was try to encourage them, and I patted my subordinate on the shoulder. Well, maybe Mr. Sawyer will understand in time. Let's keep up the good work until then. Yes, I like this job, but recently, I've started dreading coming to the office. Well, let's keep the sales going among us. Though I said this to my subordinates, the atmosphere in the sales department had indeed been bad recently. I wanted to do something about it, but I couldn't go against Mr. Sawyer, and he probably wouldn't listen to me anyway. Honestly, I was also feeling stressed by Mr. Sawyer's attitude. I was working hard, but Mr. Sawyer judged me solely on my academic background, leaving me wondering what to do. A few months passed in this manner when one day, I inadvertently stepped in as I saw Mr. Sawyer berating a subcontractor more harshly than usual. Mr. Sawyer, that might be a bit too harsh, don't you think? What is this third-rate university incompetent babbling about? University backgrounds are irrelevant now. The subcontractor is an important partner to our company. It's troubling if they are treated too harshly. Shut up. What right does someone from the bottom like you have to act so high and mighty? Mr. Sawyer glared at me hatefully and sneered unpleasantly. That's right. We don't need someone like you. An incompetent bottom dweller like you is fired. It's better to use a new hire who graduated from a prestigious university. I thought I had gotten used to Mr. Sawyer's nonsensical remarks, but his words this time made no sense to me. What do you mean? Haven't you heard? The incompetent have even incompetent ears. There's a new person joining the sales department tomorrow. He's an elite graduated from a prestigious university. Is that so? It's clear that someone from a prestigious university is more competent. I've decided to make the newcomer the manager instead of you, starting tomorrow. I was utterly shocked by Mr. Sawyer's statement. I looked at Mr. Sawyer doubtfully, wondering if he was serious, but he was grinning smugly. It would be tough for the newcomer to suddenly become a manager. I've decided. I'll speak to the HR department as the department head. By tomorrow, you'll probably be fired. It'll be refreshing to be rid of an incompetent, bottom-dweller employee. I couldn't take it anymore after being told that. Understood. Thank you for everything up until now. After saying my goodbyes, I left the workplace. A few subordinates chased after me trying to hold me back, but I only responded with, "I'm sorry I couldn't be of more help. I leave the rest to you," and then I completely left the company. My subordinates might have thought of me as cold for leaving so abruptly. But I decided that nothing good would come from Mr. Sawyer and me, as the manager, continuing to clash. Moreover, the rumors about the newcomer from a prestigious university being truly competent had reached me. If such an outstanding person was coming to support the sales department, I decided to leave the company with my regrets in check. Upon leaving the company, I immediately called my father. "Hello, Dad. I got fired from the company." "Oh, is that so? You've worked hard until now." Since Mr. Sawyer's arrival, I had been telling my father that I might quit my job. When I called to tell him, surprisingly, my father immediately told me to come to his company. So, right after resigning, I headed to the company run by my father. When I say my father's company, it's actually now my brother who has taken over as president, and my father has stepped down to the chairman position. Initially, after my graduation, I was suggested to work in sales at my father's company, but wanting to experience the rough waves of society first, I chose to work at a local company for some social experience. My father, who had listened to my whims, offered to re-employ me at his company. In fact, I had been approached a little while ago about joining my father's company. Though I had always talked about work with enthusiasm, my expression had darkened and I had become reticent in the past few months, which my father had completely seen through. "Hey, something must have changed at your workplace recently." "How did you know?" "I can tell just by looking at you. You used to go to your job as if you were kicking up the company, but now you don't talk about it at all." Was it that obvious? Actually, the new manager who arrived is an unbelievable person. While glossing over the specifics of the work, I shared what Mr. Sawyer had said, and my father was even angrier than I was. "You should quit a company like that any time. Our company always has a place for you." "It's not that simple. I have subordinates who look up to me, but I appreciate the offer. Could you give me some time to think about it?" Having had that conversation before, it's probably why my father immediately said he would re-employ me. In the end, the same day I left the company, I went to my family's company and was immediately placed in sales. Just as my father had said. My brother offered me a managerial position, but I felt it was too much to ask for. I'm a newcomer to this company, so I'll join as a regular employee. In fact, my father's company is a major precision equipment manufacturer. That is, it was a major client of the company where I used to work. As a salesperson who used to work for a parts factory that was a supplier, I vowed to work for my father's company, making the most of my knowledge. I thought about how I could repay my father and brother for everything they had done for me. The next day, I immediately went on a round of greetings to suppliers and clients with my new boss, Ryan. Among them was, of course, the company I had worked for until the day before. Knowing the situation, Ryan offered to skip it, considering my feelings. But I insisted it was fine and headed straight to my former company. As expected, my subordinates were quite surprised to see me as a new Kodak person from the client side. A subordinate who was close to me misunderstood and tearfully said, "Brian, you've come back, that's great." However, all I could respond was, "Sorry, but from today, I'm an employee of the client company." The subordinate was disappointed, hoping I would come back, but then Mr. Sawyer appeared. Mr. Sawyer, with his usual unpleasant look, glanced at me, and without even checking the name of the company I had re-employed at, he disparaged, "A bottom feeder like you could only get a job at some low-level company." Really, what kind of person is he? As I was pondering this, a man approached. "Mr. Sawyer, such disrespect towards a client is questionable." It's fine. This guy is, you know, James, I told you about the incompetent bottom feeder I fired yesterday." The man referred to as James looked worriedly at Mr. Sawyer, frowning. "I think that's irrelevant now. Whatever his status was until yesterday, he's here as a client today." "Maybe so, but we don't need to deal with a company that employs such incompetence. Send him away quickly." Mr. Sawyer. It seemed that James was the new manager who had taken over my position. The elite from prestigious university that Mr. Sawyer had mentioned. Unlike Mr. Sawyer, this person appeared polite and certainly intelligent. Hearing this exchange, I felt relieved, but Ryan, appalled, spoke up. "We came here today to introduce Brian, the new Kodak person, but isn't this disrespectful?" I know him, so no need for introductions. Besides, we won't be dealing with your company." "In that case, shall we consider our business dealings with your company terminated? I don't want to associate with a company that hires incompetence." After stating this, Mr. Sawyer waved me off rudely. "Come on, get out. I have no intention of dealing with someone like you." Are you sure about terminating our dealings? Can't you hear? Incompetents are useless all around. Get out quickly, or I'll call security." With that, there was nothing more to do. Ryan and I returned and reported the incident to my brother, the president, and my father, the chairman. My father, with a troubled expression, said, "We've had a long relationship with that company, but maybe it's time to end it," and started writing something. The rest of the story was relayed to me later by a subordinate I was close to. A few days later, President Watson personally summoned Mr. Sawyer. "Mr. Sawyer, You've done something unthinkable." "I have no idea what you're talking about." Mr. Sawyer, looking troubled, was quietly interrogated by President Watson. "You turned away a narcotic person who came to greet us the other day, didn't you?" "Oh yes, that guy, but there's no need to worry about it. That person had just left the company and was truly incompetent at his job. I didn't ask for that. Turning away a narcotic person is not the way to treat a client. But it's fine not to deal with a company that employs such a person." Mr. Sawyer retorted nonchalantly to President Watson. However, President Watson, with a stern expression, presented a letter. "Did you check which company Brian came from?" "He's from our largest client, a major precision equipment manufacturer." Upon hearing this, Mr. Sawyer turned pale and began to tremble. "No, that can't be. Brian is competent. He got rehired by such a renowned company. That can't be. That's not possible." Mr. Sawyer, trembling, started reading the letter President Watson was holding. And as he understood the content, his face turned pale and he began to shake. The letter stated that there would be a permanent halt in dealings with the major client. And Mr. Sawyer was the reason for it. "Why, I didn't do anything. Read it carefully. It's written that you turned away Brian and unilaterally declared a halt in dealings from your side." "What? Of course, my father was the one who sent that document, and I was the one who provided the information. Deals with my father's company accounted for 30% of my former company's total dealings. Therefore, not being able to deal with us would be a significant loss. Based on this, I had James conduct interviews with the subordinates. It seems you've been giving unreasonable orders and verbal abuse for some time." "No, I never. Maybe I got a bit too passionate in my guidance and went too far. I've heard that it was because of this that Brian was forced to leave." Mr. Sawyer, glared at by President Watson, began to desperately make excuses while his mouth trembled. "That's not true. That incompetent Brian is trying to set me up. It's not just Brian. Other subordinates have also reported verbal abuse and terrible behavior from you." Presented with evidence by President Watson, Mr. Sawyer collapsed to his knees. Watching Mr. Sawyer, President Watson declared calmly, "Mr. Sawyer, as of today, you will relinquish your position as department head." Upon hearing this, Mr. Sawyer covered his face with both hands and started shaking, crying. Later, President Watson visited my father's company to ask if they would consider resuming business with them. "I apologize for the great rudeness and inconvenience caused by Mr. Sawyer. I will take responsibility for his guidance. If his behavior does not improve, we will consider taking disciplinary action. It's a presumptuous request, but could we possibly resume our business dealings?" I had no grudge against President Watson. On the contrary, I was grateful for the employment until recently. After discussing with my father, we decided to resume the business dealings. Hearing this, President Watson grasped my hand and expressed his gratitude. Half a year later, a former subordinate invited me for a meal and shared what happened afterward. "Brian, it was quite a mess after that." The subordinate seemed eager to tell me. Following the incident, Mr. Sawyer's erratic guidance and abusive behavior came to light, but the company's regulations did not lead to his dismissal. Instead, Mr. Sawyer was demoted to a regular employee, and his salary was significantly reduced. He was given a completely different job, spending all day organizing files in the storeroom. I thought this was lenient enough, but it seems Mr. Sawyer couldn't accept the punishment. Angry about having to do boring work alone in a room after previously commanding many subordinates, he resigned on his own. However, after learning about the circumstances of his resignation, his wife, dismayed by his selfish behavior, left him and they divorced. He had a son, but the son also left with his mother, leaving Mr. Sawyer all alone. After sharing this, the subordinate's face brightened. With Mr. Sawyer gone and James joining us, working in sales has become much easier. James, my successor, became the manager after Mr. Sawyer's resignation. He even came to the drinking party today and greeted me. Thanks to you organizing the team so well, I've been able to manage somehow even though I'm new to this position. I truly appreciate it. Not at all. I had heard rumors about your competence before. I'm really grateful to you. It seems James wanted to express his gratitude to me directly. James, who is competent and kind, was a stark contrast to Mr. Sawyer, despite both being elites. He evaluated my work instead of judging me based on my university, which made me genuinely happy. It was a moment when I felt all my hard work had paid off. After eating and chatting together, James and I became friends. Being suddenly promoted to sales manager, James asked me various questions, eager to do his best for the workplace. Seeing James's dedication made me genuinely happy. With Mr. Sawyer gone, the sales department's atmosphere brightened, and sales performance significantly improved. This experience reaffirmed to me how much workplace atmosphere and leadership can impact work. I was motivated to work hard in my current position. I later learned that President Watson hadn't intended to let Mr. Sawyer resign. In fact, if Mr. Sawyer had shown remorse and worked diligently for about 3 months, arrangements were made for him to return to his original position. There's no such thing as a boring job. He wanted him to regain the earnestness he had when he was a newcomer. This was President Watson's final act of kindness, but unfortunately, it seems Mr. Sawyer didn't grasp this sentiment. Without valuing his duties, Mr. Sawyer left the company without understanding President Watson's intentions. Mr. Sawyer attempted to find new employment, but his age made it difficult to get hired. Even when he found a new place to work, it seems he just couldn't tolerate being treated as a newcomer. He was dismissed for being arrogant towards supervisors younger than himself and for having a bad attitude. He continued to hop from job to job and is now surviving on day-to-day work. Since then, I've continued to apply my past experiences in my new role in sales. As I learned from this incident, I'm not just focused on improving my own performance, but I'm also committed to enhancing the overall atmosphere of the department. I'm putting a lot of effort into training the juniors, and thanks to that, I'm well regarded by my subordinates and colleagues at the new company. I'm truly grateful to James for helping me realize this. I aim to continue valuing the experiences gained from my previous company and clients, and to further contribute to the growth of my family's company. I'm determined to work hard to repay the trust and patience my father and brother had in me.